Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode of Modesty's Property Corner. Yes, I hope you're all doing really well. First of all, let me start by apologizing for yesterday. We were supposed to have this session yesterday, but we couldn't hold it yesterday due to unforeseen circumstances. But yes, the good thing is that I'm here and we're all here, and let's crack on with it already. Today we're going to be giving you updates, the June property market update as per the UK property market. So it's season 1, episode number 24, and it's our June property market update session. And in this session, we've got loads and loads of things packed for you to feed yourself and your mind on everything property and property related issues as far as the UK property market is concerned. We're going to be talking about, an awful story about it's a scary one for people who own properties. So listen out for that, because sometimes the things that go on in the properties that you're renting out, you have no idea. And we're going to be talking about the Bank of England and the affordability test that was scrapped. We're going to be talking about remortgages, and we're going to be talking about the house prices and what's been happening to house prices and how has vendors been reacting to house prices, and what's realistic and what's not realistic about what the house prices are doing. So these are things we're going to be dipping our fingers into today. So let's start straight on with the scary one. So this is a story that appeared on Landlord Zone about a landlord, a lady that owns a property, and she's had these tenants since 2005. These tenants have lived in her property since 2005. And prior to them living in her property, they've been neighbors to this lady, and then she rented her property out. But unbeknown to this landlord, the people that are occupying her property were dealing on drugs. Drug dealers. They were doing serious drug business from that property, and she did not know anything about that until until armed police stormed the property and then arrested the parents and their 3 sons. So this whole family have been involved in this drug deal. They've been distributing and dealing on classes A, B, and C drugs, and this has been going on since 2017. So you can imagine how shocked this woman was to learn and understand that police raided her property and arrested her tenants on drug dealing. So what have they been doing? Do you know, they would package these drugs in mobile phone cases, and the mom will go to the post office and post these things to the final recipients, packaged in mobile phone cases. And they've been doing this for 5 good years until the police busted them in 2022. They arrested them, took them into custody, charged them, and they were found guilty. The mom and the dad, they got 2-year suspended sentences. Their 2 sons, one got 8 years in jail and the other one got 6 years jail sentence. Okay? And the horrible part of it then is when this woman realized what was going on, she now served the family Section 8, basically an eviction notice which has to be court supervised. And upon serving them that eviction notice, the family members moved into the property and changed the locks. Oh my goodness. And just when you thought you've seen it all, they changed the locks. So they are frustrating the landlady, making it more and more difficult for her to even have access to have the property back. And then she's gone to the courts, and the process of eviction and repossessing her property is ongoing. But we all know how that process will work. It will drag on for a few months, and within that few months she will keep losing rents. So already she's bracing herself up for losing about £14,000 worth of rent. And not just the rent that she's going to be losing, she's also going to be bracing herself up for significant bill in terms of the refurbishment of the property and repairs that will occur, because you would imagine the condition they will leave that property in by the time they finally get evicted, from that property by the courts and the enforcement agencies. So this is the worst nightmare that any landlord would ever imagine. And to think of the fact that you rented this property to people who used to be neighbors to you, and you trusted them, and you felt that, well, they will look after the property for me because we used to be neighbors. And then all of a sudden you realize that you've rented your property to drug barons. You've rented it to drug barons. Police have raided the property. They are not giving the property back. You're going to be losing £14,000 in rent. You're bracing yourself up for significant costs of repairs in that property. Come on, how bad can this get for this landlord? So the moral of all this is, as a landlord, please make sure you keep an eye on what's going on in the property that you've rented out, because sometimes you might just take your foot off the gas and assume that everything is okay. Meanwhile, there could be a few things going. Some properties are even being used as cannabis factories, and the landlords have no idea that the properties are being used for such nefarious activities. So the best thing for you to do as a landlord is, when you rent your property out, try and see how you can be gaining access to the property somehow, just to have an idea what's going on. It doesn't mean you are interfering every time with the lives of the people who are living there. Yes, tenants would like to be left alone. That's naturally what tenants would like to do. But there is a difference between pestering your tenants and just making a reasonably frequent visits to the property, just to make sure everything is okay. If not for anything, just to make sure your tenants are okay. Really, it's a duty of care that you as a landlord owes the tenant. Some landlords, they are smart about it. What they do is they find it's either for maintenance reasons, and they take their time to be personally involved in repairs going on in the house, which gives them the opportunity to at least enter the property, see things for themselves, and see what's going on in the house, and see if there is anything that needs your attention, as a duty of care as well. So keep an eye on your property. Don't just rent it out and let it go. And to be fair to this landlady, she doesn't even live in the area. She lives outside of the area. She moved out of the area. So even her neighbors didn't know where she moved to. Otherwise, they would have drawn her attention, because the report said that her neighbors would have drawn her attention to that property if she was around, because they have noticed some suspicious activities in the property. But because she wasn't around, she moved out of the area, there was no way they could contact her. So there are some landlords in that situation who they don't live in the area where they are renting their properties, and when things go wrong, to be fair to them, you don't expect them to be on top of it straight away, but find a way to know what's going on in your property. If you don't live in the area and there's an agent managing the property for you, make sure the agent pays regular visits that are reasonable to the property, and you get a report back from the agent on the state of the property, the tenants, and their well-being and their welfare and everything. That makes a lot of sense. So that's the first thing we're going to be talking about today. Now, the second thing I want to bring to your notice here is, if you own a second home, or if you're looking to own a second home or a holiday let in a city called Brighton, this may not be a very, very good news for you, okay? So what's going on here? Brighton and Hove Albion Council are about to become the first UK city to put a ban or clamp down on second homes and holiday lets in Brighton, because the situation they found themselves in Brighton, in fact, as of now, Brighton, outside of London, the capital, Brighton is the city with the highest rents outside of the capital. Brighton is the second most expensive city to rent a property in outside of London. So what is the reason for that? They reckon that there are lots of people who have got second homes in Brighton, and a lot of the properties in Brighton are now used either as second homes or holiday lets. And you know what the obvious reasons are. Brighton is a very good holiday place. I've been to Brighton on holiday myself with my family, and we loved it. But we didn't live in an apartment, we stayed in a hotel. So holiday lets are big, is a big deal, it's a big business in Brighton, because every year millions of people troop into Brighton on holiday. Brighton is a seaside town, it's a beach city, and it's a city that people go there and they have fun. And people who are going on holiday need a place to stay on holiday. So a lot of property owners have found holiday lets in Brighton very, very lucrative. So what is happening is that it has reduced the amounts of properties that are available for long-term rentals. And it has pushed rents upwards in Brighton, such that rental properties are almost becoming unaffordable for people who live in Brighton. And the council are trying to do something about it. Imagine where about 3,000 properties are either a second home or a holiday let. So it's telling negatively, and the impact on the city for people who want to live and work in the city is so negative that they are now trying to find a solution to it, because the people who come and go from Brighton are not really the people who make Brighton thick. Brighton thrives more on the people who live and work in Brighton. So for any council, it will make sense for them to really make sure that those who live and work in their city don't suffer as a result of the activities of those who come and go. At the same time, Brighton and Hove Albion Council are benefiting from the influx of people into the city on holiday. So either way, they wouldn't want to discourage holiday makers who come to Brighton. They want you to come on holiday in Brighton, because when you come with money. Within that space of time you're going to spend in Brighton, you're going to spend a lot of money. But then you stay and you go. At the same time, they want to balance. So it's the balancing acts for the people in Brighton, for the council. So what they have done is that the Brighton and Hove Albion Council, they are now targeting, first of all, new builds, right? And not just any new build, they are looking at new builds that are in certain hotspots areas. There are certain areas in Brighton that are hotspots where 1 in 5 homes in that hotspot area belong to second home owners. So the owners are not, it's a second home to the owners. So imagine an area where 20% of the properties there is a second home. And a lot of these second homes are largely empty for a greater part of the year. So it's a nightmare for a council, and especially in a country where there is so much homelessness now in the UK. Homelessness is a big issue in the UK. But then you go to some areas, 20% of the houses there are empty for a greater part of the year because it's a second home. And some of those who own it as second homes, what they now do is that when they don't live in there, they rent it out as a holiday let. And then they make money out of it as well. So there's some kind of moral warfare going on here, trying to balance the morality of a lot of people owning second homes in a country where homelessness is a big issue. And also driving up rent in a city where they want people to live and work in Brighton and be comfortable. And at a time when cost of living is becoming almost unbearable, the council is trying to make sure that at least the well-being and the welfare of those who live and work in Brighton are taken care of. So there are certain pressure groups in Brighton who have been pushing for certain measures like rent control in Brighton. So what the council have done in Brighton is they have listened to these people and they have said, okay, you know what, we've listened to you and we're going to act on some of those things that you're asking us to do. So they have written to the housing secretary asking for permission from the housing secretary to trial out the rent control, at least just do a pilot scheme of the rent control and see how it works. So they've written to the housing secretary and they're waiting for permission to enable them to do that. That's one thing they want to do. The other thing they are looking to do, the Brighton Council, is they're also now looking to introduce landlord licensing, such that before you become a landlord in Brighton, you have to be registered with the council and you have to get a license to become a landlord. And they are also looking to introduce what they call a minimum standards charter for landlords. That minimum standards charter is voluntary. It's not compulsory. It's voluntary, just to say to landlords, this is the minimum standard we expect of you and of the property that you're going to be renting out. It's voluntary anyway, but that's to put it at the back of the mind of landlords that at least you are renting this property to human beings, make it livable and make it decent. That's the minimum standard. So these are some of the policies that the Brighton and Hove Albion Council are trying to push, just to make living worth it in Brighton at the end of the day. So that's what the Brighton and Hove Albion Council are doing. So, I mean, we would like to hear your views about these things. What do you think about what Brighton and Hove Albion Council are doing? Do you think it's something that you would wish that your council would do? Or as a landlord, do you think they're meddling a lot into people's business in terms of holiday lets and being a landlord or even owning second homes? If you have views on these things, please share it with us, any of the channels that you're listening to or you're watching this, and let's know what you think. So, number 3 thing that we want to look at now. Yes, this one, I've had a few questions around this before now, and I felt like, let me talk about it and let's talk about it in this session. And it's one of the things that's one of the news that came up in June about the Bank of England scrapping mortgage affordability tests. A lot of people have got in touch with me to say, what does this mean? Does it mean that we can now borrow whatever we want to borrow because there is no more affordability test? Or does it mean that they're going to loosen the grip on the money and let it flow? People are just wondering, what does this mean? So let me break it down in its simplest form for you to understand. The Bank of England scrapping out mortgage affordability test simply means, in 2014, the Bank of England introduced something they call the mortgage market affordability test. It's also called a stress test. Okay? What this does is that it enables banks or lenders to stress test your mortgage against a higher rate, a rate that is higher than what they're offering to you. So let's say you're getting this mortgage at 1.9%. The bank will stress test that mortgage and say, you can afford it at 1.9%. If the rate goes up to 5%, can you still afford that mortgage? If it goes up to 5%. So they stress test that mortgage at a rate higher than what you're getting it at the moment, at that particular point in time. If you pass that stress test, you have passed one of the affordability tests. So the Bank of England introduced this stress test in 2014 on the back of the financial crisis, to prevent what happened during the financial crisis from repeating itself again, where families were borrowing beyond their financial capacities. And that was why the Bank of England introduced that, so that the banks don't flood families with debts and overburden them with debts, and family debts increase, because when families become too indebted, it impacts negatively on the GDP, on the productivity, on the economy. So, and to prevent that financial crisis scenario repeating itself, the bank introduced this. So that has been in place since 2014. But now the Bank of England are saying, well, we think this policy has run its course. It's time to call it off, right? So that does not mean that your mortgages are no longer going to be, the affordability is not going to be tested when you go to take your mortgages. No. Now the Bank of England is now allowing lenders to use other affordability test measures that they have to test and stress affordability when they want to lend. One of them will be the loan to income ratio. The loan to income ratio is one measure of affordability that the lenders or the banks use. What that does is that it enables you to borrow up to a certain multiple of your income. Usually now it's 4.5 times your income or more, depending on your circumstance. So that's the loan to income ratio that the banks are now using. And the Bank of England are saying, well, we actually think that measure is enough to measure affordability, plus other affordability measurements that the banks use, because the bank will also look at your income and expenditures and lend you according to the income and expenditures as well. So there are certain other affordability measurement tools that the banks and the lenders are using, apart from the mortgage market affordability tool that the Bank of England are withdrawing. So your mortgage is still going to be tested, but it's going to be tested along the lines of your loan to income ratio and other FCA approved affordability measures that the banks and lenders are authorized to use. So the Bank of England removing or scrapping off that doesn't mean that there is no more affordability tests that's going to be run. No, they're still going to test that affordability. They're going to look at how much you're earning, and you're not going to be able to borrow over a certain multiple of that income. So that will still remain. I hope that's clear enough for us to understand. Otherwise, if you have any questions on that, please feel free to reach me on any channel that you can reach me on any of our social media channels, on WhatsApp, or you can reach me on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. We're everywhere. We're omnipresent. Okay. Okay. So number 4 thing that I want to discuss with you today it's about the house prices, right? House prices. People are looking to buy properties. Some people are just confused about, do I go ahead and buy now or should I wait? What's really going to happen or what's really happening? Well, according to Rightmove, there's a report that Rightmove released that covers up till June 2022. That report says that house prices in the UK have broken the record for the 5th time in a row in 2022. What it means that house prices have grown consistently for 5 times in a row and have broken the record 5 times in a row in 2022. As at June 2022, that is amazing. That's astonishing. So it means that every month it breaks the record. Every month it breaks. So 5 times in a row in 2022, house prices have broken the records. So what's really going on here? The average UK house price as at June 2022, according to Rightmove, now stands as £368,000 plus. Average UK house price now stands at over £368,000 average. I mean, that is phenomenal. That's so when it says that it's been breaking the record 5 months, you can understand that on average, the average UK house price now house property costs about £368,000, over £368,000. Now, in terms of percentage growth, the UK house price has grown at 9.7% as at June last year. That is 1 year to June. Between June 2021 and June 2022, the house price have grown by 9.7%. Now, that's a drop from what it was in May, because as at May 2022, it was 10.2%. So it's dropped from 10.2% in May to 9.7% in June. But then the percentage increase is dropping, but then the value is increasing. That is crazy. Now I'm going to tell you why, why this is an irony and what really is going on later on. So that drop, Rightmove is saying that drop is likely going to continue throughout the rest of the year. In fact, Rightmove is predicting that by the end of this year, house prices would have grown by 5%. That's what Rightmove are predicting. Okay? So why is it dropping? What's this drop? What's causing this drop in house price growth? In percentage, not in amount, not in value. But the percentage, the reason is, if you look at the economy at the moment, the living costs crisis is a major factor because household finances are being squeezed. So people are really making sure that they can afford a property before they go to buy. And what is done is that it's now affecting demand a little bit. So the gap between supply and demand for properties in the UK is kind of closing a little bit. It was very, very wide like 2 years ago. The demand far outstripped supply. But now demand is shrinking a little bit and it's coming, it looks like reality is beginning to setting a little bit in the housing market. So the housing market is almost returning to pre-pandemic levels in terms of activity levels, in terms of demand and supply. As at May 2022, right? As at June 2022, there were 7% more property stock on the market than June last year, right? 7% more property on the market than June last year. Okay, so but the demand is now shrinking because for every property in the market, there is now an 8% drop in demand for every property in the market, and it keeps dropping. So from May to June, it has dropped. The demand for properties has dropped from between May and June, and the demand will continue dropping according to Rightmove prediction, because people are taking their time now to make decisions on whether to buy or not to buy, what we can afford, and increasing rates. Mortgage rates are increasing because the Bank of England are raising rates, mortgage rates, and so the increasing rates are also a contributing factor. It's becoming more expensive to get a mortgage, not just more expensive, but more difficult, because affordability criteria is being tightened by a lot of lenders as well. So because of that, people are finding it not just more difficult to get a mortgage, but also more expensive. So the appetite of owning that property is kind of dropping a little bit. Plus, this is a season where demand is usually low anyway, because in the summer, activity in property in the summer is not usually that high, because people are more focused on going away, going on holiday, come back, and then we reset and we go again. So the seasonal drop thing is also a factor. But other wider economic factors are more significant, also playing a role in all that. So that's what's happening. But the thing now is, vendors continue to ask for more for the properties that they are bringing to the market, despite the fact that demand is dropping. And in fact, now more and more properties are coming to the market as reduced. More and more people are reducing their asking prices. If you have been monitoring, the property portals and channels, you'll be seeing more and more reduced properties coming back to the market. What does that tell you? Some vendors have put out those prices out there, and nobody's buying at those prices, so they are being forced to reduce their prices. But even new properties coming to the market these days now, vendors are still trying their best to ask for the utmost. So it will take vendors coming down to reality of the demand and asking for more realistic prices. Otherwise, activities in the marketplace in the housing sector may not match what it was last year. So vendors, it's up to you. If you want to live within the realistic world, fine. And if you want to keep asking for more I would advise vendors to study the market before they put up their asking price. If you come to us as estate agents, we're going to tell you what the realistic asking price for your property is, and we're going to make sure you get the most that you can out of that. So thank you very much for listening. God bless you all, and I'm going to see you again next week. Take care and cheers. Bye now.